Chapter 7. The Magic of Attention. Perception and attention. Attention is one of the key words found throughout the works of Carlos Castaneda. The specific way in which we use our attention causes us to perceive reality in the way we do. In that sense, attention sustains the world. Attention is that property of awareness that causes us to focus on certain aspects of internal or external reality while discarding others. But in the Don Juanist vision of reality, as in modern physics, there is much more to the world than what is perceived normally. In fact, it contains an infinite number of elements that escape our perception. For modern physicists and chemists, technology has served as a way of perceiving and manipulating certain aspects of this invisible reality, such as radio waves, radiation, or television signals. The sorcerer, on the other hand, since time immemorial, has used another tool for witnessing and manipulating this separate reality: the magic of attention. Human perception has been trained to function in a selective way, not determined by biological factors. The result is the everyday way in which we see the world. The way we use our attention is precisely the result of that training, through which all new human beings must pass as they enter into contact with other human beings who already perceive reality in a certain way due to this very same training. The process of attention, which is properly said to be a flow, implies an intricate process of selection, what Castaneda terms skimming, in Spanish language editions only. Skimming refers to the process of choosing to perceive certain elements of reality while discarding others. In a universe of practically infinite perceptual possibilities, in such a way that what results is an orderly perception of reality, not chaos. The magic of attention consists of giving order and meaning to everything we perceive. Apart from selecting what we perceive, it also refines the details of any given object in such a way as to agree with the perception of other human beings. However, adult human beings may agree on how they perceive a given object, but the same object would be perceived differently by animals who do not pass through the process of human socialization. Infants, on the other hand, are born with raw animal perception. They haven't yet learned the magic of attention that will arrange their perception in terms that will permit them to function in the world of everyday affairs with the other members of their species. Attention and its limits. A small child functions with a perception much less restricted than that of an adult. Therefore, oftentimes, the child will perceive aspects of reality that adults can no longer see, that they would discard as childish fantasies. Non-orthodox modern psychology has given credit to observed phenomena in the peculiar world of infantile perception. An example can be found in the dermal optical phenomenon, visual perception through the skin, in which any child with the proper training is capable of seeing and reading with the hands or feet. Not long ago, I witnessed a child play a game of dominoes blindfolded. He did not require the use of his eyes to see. However, the schools that teach this do not admit adults. They say that in general, only children are capable of learning this technique. In Mexico, this phenomenon is widely known. since these dermal optical schools periodically advertise on television to promote their courses. Adults, due to the unconscious training of their attention, are already firmly fixed to the limits and specific modes of perception, while children enjoy much greater freedom in this regard. In the world of Don Juan, the sorcerers and apprentices are warriors, struggling to rescue this possibility of using their perception in new ways, much like what we knew as infants, to aid them in penetrating into other worlds. Once we learn, due to the force of our attention, to perceive in the way we do, we also cancel out, almost always permanently, the possibility of ever perceiving anything beyond what our attention permits us. We can, however, involve ourselves in a consistent and disciplined work in order to break our perceptual barriers. Don Juan's proposition is that deep inside all of us lies the latent ability of our awareness to focus itself on unusual aspects of the world, on the unknown, that we normally do not even suspect exist. The first and second attention. The way in which we use our attention in everyday life is known in the work of Castaneda as the first attention. This is what we use to perceive and impart order to our everyday world. The majority of people only know and have developed this form of attention, which keeps closed that door that opens the way to the separate reality. Castaneda also indicates the existence of another form, called the second attention, which represents an unknown and very specialized use of the attention. It permits us to perceive another, practically limitless part of reality that could well be called another world, since it is so foreign to our world of everyday affairs. The two attentions operate in coexisting parallel areas of reality that normally never come into contact. That is why Castaneda states that the first and second attention are separated by parallel lines. In Spanish language edition only. To illustrate the perceptual difference between the two attentions, I will take the perception of the human body. In the first attention, it is seen as the physical body we all know. In the second, it is seen as the famous cocoon, or luminous egg, so often mentioned by Don Juan. The fixation of the attention. Another characteristic of either first or second attention is its ability to summon events. People in general do not perceive this and attribute much of what happens to them as good luck or adversity. Without ever suspecting, they obsessively focus their attention on things, objects, situations, or people through fear, attachment, desire, or curiosity, and unconsciously summon these events to their lives. Also, excessive fixation of the second attention can provoke unusual effects, similar to what has taken place among sorcerers and seers, especially the old seers, creating an endless supply of magical objects for all kinds of purposes, from small amulets to great pyramids. The recovery of the second attention and its integration with the first implies, according to Castaneda's work, entry into the mysterious and practically unthinkable third attention, also known as total freedom, in Spanish language editions only. However, on a more practical level, For readers of this book, a healthy approximation of the second attention could very well begin with a specialized, non-ordinary handling of the first attention. Not doing and attention. Performing activities that obligate the first attention to focus itself in unusual ways on the known world, or to focus on aspects that generally go unnoticed, produces the effect of an increase and/or saturation of the attention. This can lead to states of heightened awareness and eventually to the second attention. Of course, as were described before, the exercises of the not doings of the personal self and stopping the internal dialogue are also exercises of attention, but their emphasis or sphere of action differs from what is described here. Techniques. Following are some exercises that could properly be classified as exercises of attention, as well as some in which the work of Castaneda is classified simply as not doings. These are included together here, since both groups tend to produce substantial variations in perception through intentionally modifying the use of attention. 52. Observing shadows. 1. Find a large, leafy bush. 2. Find a comfortable, relaxed position in which you can concentrate. 3. Calmly observe a branch of the bush, but instead of focusing on the leaves, concentrate your attention exclusively on their shadows until you find yourself looking at a branch of shadows in place of leaves. 4. Widen your field of view, concentrating only on the shadows. 5. Try to perceive the entire bush as a bush of shadows. Later stages of this exercise can be practiced using a tree and following the same procedure. Practice for 30 minutes minimum. 53. Observing rocks. Another way of working with shadows is with rocks. 1. Observe a small pebble placed on top of a larger rock. A large flat rock where you can lie face down would be ideal. Your face should be about 8 inches from the pebble. Concentrate on the pebble, looking at it in detail, trying to discover its cavities and holes, observing all the small details inside. Concentrate until all of your attention is absorbed by the pebble. Observe it until it fills your entire field of vision. 2. Next, focus your attention on the shadow cast by the pebble, perceiving it as a fluid that keeps the pebble and the rock glued together until they appear as one. 3. Following what Castaneda presents in Journey to Ixtlan, continue your observation of shadows using large rocks. You need 2 large rocks or boulders that cast long and more or less parallel adjacent shadows. Find a comfortable, relaxed position, looking at the 2 shadows simultaneously, trying to unite them perceptually by crossing your eyes, but keeping the images in focus until the shadows are superimposed on one another. Try this by placing 2 expertly chosen small or medium-sized rocks in an appropriate spot in which to do the exercise. For some people, this seems to work better than with very large rocks. 54. The tree made of sky. This variation of the preceding exercise has given us very good results. 1. Find a leafy tree of medium height, preferably one you like at first sight. If the tree forms part of a larger group that casts a large shadow, so much the better. You must be able to see patches of sky between the leaves, but not direct sunlight, so as not to injure your eyes. 2. Sit or lie down underneath the chosen tree. Of course, you must be comfortable. Look at the branch structure of the tree. But in place of seeing branches and leaves, focus your attention on the spaces between them. Try to perceive this group of spaces as a whole, like you normally do with the branches and leaves. If the background sky is blue, you will, little by little, begin to perceive a tree with blue leaves, or pieces of blue scattered over a green, watery background. You must be relaxed and able to concentrate while avoiding the tendency to zero in on specific details, striving instead to take in everything entering your field of vision. Once perception is altered and you find yourself viewing something like the tree with blue leaves, practice paying attention to details in the scene. Avoid focusing on them directly, since this would break the spell of your not doing. 55. Walking backward. This simple technique can be practiced over almost any kind of terrain, depending on the ability of the participant. The exercise entails walking backward without turning around to see where you are going. In the beginning, practice on flat level ground, without dangerous irregularities. Only gradually increase the degree of difficulty as you continue the practice. 1. Walk backward, having someone there to guide you. The exercise is done in complete silence to aid in concentration and sensitization. The person guiding walks facing you as you walk backward. If there should be an irregularity or an obstacle, the guide will indicate with hand signals whether to go to the right, to the left, or stop. Do not look behind you, only at the hands of the person guiding. Practice for at least 20 minutes, after which the roles of guide and walker can be reversed. 2. This is done like the first step, but without a guide. Your guides are, initially, your knowledge of the terrain and its characteristics, which you will no doubt have noticed in looking down at the terrain in front of your feet. Now, little by little, try to sense the terrain behind you with your entire body. Practice for 15 minutes minimum. 3. This is done in the manner of step 1, but now begin to trot backwards, slowly at first, and then as you gain confidence, increase speed until you are going at an all-out run. 4. This is done like step 3, but without a guide. 5. Take extended walks backward in the country, down a known path. After 1 or 2 hours of this, you should be soaked in not doing. 6. Walk backward, but in a group. This can add an enormous quantity of extra attention to each participant, but it requires that all work with the same level of intention and concentration. Commentary on the technique. One principal aspect of this technique is that it can teach us to perceive the exterior world without depending so much on our eyes. Therefore, it is very important to resist the impulse to turn around. Each time we turn around, we interrupt the process of sensitization that the body goes through in order to adjust to the experience. Turning around converts the situation into something ordinary, and we have to start again from the beginning. However, becoming sensitive does not mean perceiving with the back. We are not trying to visualize what lies behind us, as that would keep us dependent on our eyes. Rather, we are looking for a feeling of security emanating from corporeal consciousness, using non-visual stimuli. The reality is that the entire body is capable of functioning as a perceiver, not just the eyes alone. The correct attitude is one of patience, relaxation, and, if possible, inner silence. 56. The hat with mirrors. Find a suitable hat and attach 2 mirrors to it. Any hat with a brim or sun visor will do. From the brim, hang 2 small mirrors 4 to 6 inches from your face and a little to one side of your direct line of sight, in such a way that you can see behind yourself. It is important that the mirrors not obstruct your vision ahead. They should be positioned so as to provide you with the widest field of vision both in front and behind. The mirrors can be mounted by means of wires or screws or any system that will hold them firmly against any possible movement. With the hat finished, you can now practice the following exercises. 1. The basic exercise consists of walking backward using the mirrors for guidance. The more you practice, the more attention and skill you gain, allowing you to walk over irregular terrain, out in the country, or on gentle slopes. The degree of attention you are looking for is achieved when you can look simultaneously in both mirrors and integrate the separate images so that they form a single field of vision, exactly as you do when your eyes are looking forward. 2. This is the same as the preceding step, but now you include the field of view in front of you as well, keeping in sight the field of view behind you, and all the while walking backward. 3. Nocturnal practice. Follow the instructions as in step 1, but do it at night. The ideal place for this would be a forested area or a desert. Begin slowly, giving yourself time to get used to walking among shadows. Don't be frightened or nervous if strange things are seen in the mirrors. Actually, it is not strange if you begin to see or experience unusual things when you behave in unusual ways. 4. Group practice. As in the majority of the walking exercises, doing it in a group can broaden the scope of the experience, as long as the group is tightly knit, everyone working equally. A variation, only to be practiced by those with a good deal of experience, is to combine the exercises of the skeleton, explained in the section on the awareness of death, with the nocturnal exercises of the hat with mirrors. Practicing this alone is not recommended. The purifying harness. In The Eagle's Gift, Castaneda mentions using a harness to suspend the self above the ground as a not doing that has the virtue of purifying the body and even curing illnesses that are not physical. He also says that its beneficial effect can be used to prepare the self for a difficult journey or any other experience requiring maximum effort. And he presents it in two variations: suspending from the ceiling or suspending from the branch of a tree. Personally, I have worked more with trees, which, due to the natural affinity they have for human beings, are an immense help. For both variations, the first step is to gather the necessary materials as follows: a harness in which you can remain suspended for long periods without pain or discomfort. Those used in parachuting, speleology, or something similar would work. A harness of the type used in mountain climbing is generally not as comfortable, since such an activity rarely requires remaining suspended for long periods of time. A suitable harness can be purchased ready-made at sporting goods stores, or since it is not difficult, you can make one. Borrow one to use as a model from a mountain climber, parachutist, rescue worker, or speleologist, or gather the needed information from books on the subject. The material I have used is the same as that used in automobile seat belts, sewn with nylon fishing line. Each seam should be sewn across at least 3 times, using a small point stitch for maximum security. High-quality rope or steel cable with a resistance of at least 1,100 pounds. I personally prefer rope. Besides being more natural, it is lighter and easier to manage. The rope used by mountain climbers or speleologists is at least 9 millimeters. Some kind of support over which to pass the rope and elevate yourself. It must be high enough, strong, and not apt to damage the rope during use. 57. Suspended from the ceiling. For this technique, we need an appropriate place, such as a warehouse, a garage, or any space with exposed overhead beams of metal or wood. The only requirements are that there be a room above the beam to pass the rope, and that the beam be strong enough to hold a person suspended in a harness. Instead of allowing the rope to contact the beam directly, it is much easier to tie 1 or 2 carabiners to the beam, which function as supports for the elevating rope. Carabiners are a type of oval ring made of steel or aluminum with a movable safety catch that can be opened or closed. They are extremely strong and will not damage a rope. They permit it to slide without friction or fraying. They can be purchased at any sporting goods shop. With all the necessary materials, the technique is very simple. First, pass one end of the rope over the beam or through the carabiners. Get in the harness and tie it to one end of the rope. With a combined effort of 2 strong persons pulling on the other end, you are elevated almost to the level of the beam. The free end of the rope is tied to some kind of anchor near the floor. You can remain suspended in this way for as long as necessary. Periods from 8 to 12 hours are usually adequate. This exercise is best done at night, as that is when the ego and the ordinary way in which you see the world lose their force. When the exercise ends, you are lowered. This procedure can be repeated as often as required. 58. Suspended from a tree. The same materials can be used as in the previous technique, with the exception of the steel cable, as trees are not overly fond of steel. Steel or no, be careful not to damage the tree in any event. The following steps will help in that regard. 1. Find a large tree with strong, thick limbs. 2. Ask the tree's permission, speaking aloud, to work in it, and ask its help, explaining your motives for doing so. Although it might never occur to us, it could happen that the tree would be opposed to sending any kind of sensitive message. If this is the case, you will have to look for another tree. 3. Climb up to the selected branch and prepare it for the passing of the main rope, or for that which will be used to tie down the carabiners. The preparation consists of wrapping the branch with canvas or some other type of resistant cloth, tying it securely. This is to protect the branch from injury from the main rope. 4. Once the supports are in place, pass the free end of the rope over the limb, enter the harness, and be pulled up. 5. Be very attentive to any manifestation on the part of the tree, which will react to your presence. Remember that you are inside its luminous cocoon. 6. Communicate with the tree. Express your feelings or sing to it. 7. This exercise is best done in an isolated area, away from people not involved in your work. Commentary on the technique. The technique of remaining suspended has many uses. I have used it myself, and I have applied it in my work groups to treat cases of depression, disorientation, or emotional crisis. It also has served me as a preparation for camp exercises, excursions, or trips that demand more effort than normal, such as long hikes in the mountains or open desert country. The result of suspension has always been a feeling of purification and of being re-energized, of feeling much lighter. 3 elements to keep in mind while doing this exercise are absolute silence, darkness, and maintaining a high level of concentration during the preparatory stages. The longer and higher a person remains suspended, the greater will be the effect. It is possible to find trees with suitable branches at heights of 30 feet or more. It may be practiced for several days in a row, or the participant can remain suspended day and night. In this case, begin at dawn and end at dawn of the following day. It is important not to fall asleep. It can be beneficial to sleep while suspended from a tree, even in using a hammock. But then you would be dealing with another exercise. As a precaution, someone below can call up to the participant from time to time. The state of awareness and perception after the hours of practicing this not doing is quite special and should not be recklessly dissipated. Once you have descended from the harness, you should strive to maintain a state of attention and silence, avoiding noisy attitudes or activities that will rapidly disconnect you from the experience. Commentary on the exercises of attention and not doing. These exercises should be carried out with tranquility and without haste, since their effect is cumulative. Average people, accustomed only to doing, can easily become bored or fatigued with exercises of not doing, especially if there are no quick or spectacular results. Persistence and effort are the basic factors. The effect of being immersed for hours and not doing is manifest even in those cases where it is felt that nothing happened. Concentration is important, and it is something that the apprentice must learn. We are accustomed to letting our attention and our thoughts wander and digress without any control on our part. Little by little, we can learn to direct our first attention and to concentrate. Only then will we come finally to inner silence and forms of attention that we did not realize existed.